Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chuck Sacco. I'm Assistant Dean for Strategic Initiatives at the Close School for Entrepreneurship, also Director of our Biata Institute for Entrepreneurship, which is our Student Startup Incubator. And this is part of the series of webinars that we're doing where we're profiling our student and recent graduate entrepreneurs and working to understand what are they going through from their business perspective, how are they pivoting, what's changed for them, what's challenging for them, but also what are some of the new opportunities for them as they move forward in the coming weeks and months. So today we have Robbie Decker and Jaron Nabil from SafeSense. And with that, I'm going to hand it to Melissa Tavere to start the interview.
Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Tavere, and I'm the program manager at the Close School. Welcome, Robbie and Jaron. Can you start off by telling us first about the evolution of SafeSense, how you guys met, and how you came up with the idea?
Well, actually, it's kind of a funny story because Gibran and I met at the beginning of our freshman year. We were actually not roommates, but we lived on the same floor in Millennium, and we became good friends and went through classes and stuff together. And he actually reached out to me in early 2019 about coming on board and helping him really accelerate the process with SafeSense. He had been working on stuff in the background, and we actually had a few different people on our floor helping him, but they either moved on to other obligations or continuing with school, and they got busier. So I figured I would be able to help him out. And it's been a phenomenal little bit over a year now. I've been able to help him and, really grow the company together and work together. And we're a really good team. Moving forward, we would like to actually try and get SafeSense off the ground. Obviously, everybody's pivoting now, so it's kind of figuring out what we can do from home.
So Gibran, what about from your perspective?
Is Gibran, and I'm the co-founder of SafeSense. So just to give a little brief overview, the idea for SafeSense started in late 2017, and it was just a few sketches hanging on my wall. Then I met Chuck in August of 2017 and talked to him about my idea of building a bicycle. And Chuck told me, why don't you break it down into a few parts, because building a bicycle is very capital intensive, would require a lot more work. Over the past 2 years, the project has continued to evolve from a different idea. It's basically just an evolution of idea, and right now it's AI-powered handlebar grips. We were also at the Angel Venture Fair in 2018 and a couple of Drexel competitions, obviously. And Robbie came on board over a year ago, and since then we've made great progress. That's in a nutshell.
Thank you, Gibran.
Thank you, everyone.
So Robbie, can you tell us a little bit about your pre-pandemic business model?
Well, our pre-pandemic business model was really continuing to grow our customer outreach. It's really through, social media and other kind of practices of meeting bicyclists in the city and trying to spread the idea. We went to neighborhood bike works and other places that are around the Philadelphia area. And it was really about kind of the grassroots movement of, who is cycling, who is bikes in the city, how do we reach out to these people and really grow that potential customer base and get our ideas out there. And we were fairly successful at that through a multitude of different social media attacks. Maybe we have an Instagram page, we have a Facebook page. We like to keep them as updated as they can be with stuff either we find interesting, but it was a lot of social media and really trying to reach out to people from a grassroots movement. There's people that use Instagram and Facebook for various, different things. You get a lot of that important feedback that we need, and continuing to kind of pivot our business model now. I think it would be amazing if more people kind of came out of this pandemic with an emphasis on their own health. And, I've seen a lot of people in my hometown actually riding bikes and being out with family and stuff. So if that's something that we could help promote in the future more safely, then, this pivot could work out really well for us. We're trying to find the silver linings and what we were trying to do versus what we're trying to do in the next 3 to 6 months.
Do you have an actual product yet, or are you still in prototype?
Yes. We kind of have a product, but the problem is it's not quite there yet. We've compartmentalized different aspects of the SafeSense unit, and ideally we can get the handlebar grips done and actually able to ship to customers in the next 3 months. We've been prototyping the handlebar grips for over a year now. Actually, Gibran had handlebar grips that worked before I even came on the team. So now it's kind of moving that to the next iteration. We have a working AI that works. We have actually the entire unit that works as a prototype. But now if we could kind of break down some of those parts and either get it out to customers or say, look, we have this that completely works. This is what we need help on. Then we'll be a little bit closer. I mean, technically for a whole idea, I think SafeSense is still firmly in the prototyping phase. But I mean, we're getting closer with different aspects. So it's very exciting.
Can people actually purchase your product online?
Not yet. People have reached out to us. We've had Facebook messages and stuff to say, hey, what's the ETA on the product? Do you think we would be able to test drive it and stuff like that? So there is an interest, but we haven't started, I guess, marketing units yet, so we haven't sold any.
So tell me, are you feeling optimistic about all of the changes that are occurring with COVID-19?
I think you have to be optimistic. I think from a certain perspective, obviously, I mean, this is a very tumultuous time for a lot of different people, but I always like to think that hard times make hard people. And I think that we're going to come out of this stronger globally. America, we're going to find a way to actually use this to grow. And I mean, from my perspective, I would hope that you get more people out on bikes, you get more people kind of conscious of their day-to-day life and say, hey, rather than drive, an hour and sit in traffic to get to work in the city, maybe I could bike to a train station and then use public transit or something like that. Little kind of incremental changes that I hope happen in the American mindset. But as far as the business side goes, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I know that there are some small business loans floating out. You got to be a little bit optimistic. Can't be all negative.
Pre-pandemic, you were going around to bike shops and trying to get feedback from customers about your product. Obviously, now you can't do that. The bike store around the corner from my house is actually open to customers, and they actually have a lot of people showing up in their parking lot to get their bikes checked out. So that's an optimistic sign. How are you going to interact with bicycle shops? Have you thought about how, because you can't actually go there, how are you interacting with them?
It's a little tough. So where I'm located in South Jersey, there are a lot of different bicycle shops. And actually, one of the things that got me most interested in SafeSense is because of where I'm from, I'm right by the Jersey Shore, and there's a lot of rental bicycles. And I know that you have people that want to go out in the summertime, in the springtime, in the fall, and get out and ride. And I could foresee some of them closing potentially. We don't know what's going to happen to every small business. But ideally, if there are some of those small businesses open, I could call up the manager and say, hey, could we actually get in? If we have a product that works, we have a prototype that works, would you be interested in kind of giving us your feedback? We've done that a couple times with Keswick Cycle on the University of Penn's campus and some other places. I actually know that there's Beacon Cycling in South Jersey. They were very interested in their product. And then obviously everything happened with the pandemic. So it'll be interesting to see if, a business or bike shop would say, hey, we love your idea, we love your prototype, we'd love to give you feedback, maybe come in after business hours and we can, social distance and we'll check out the bike and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we would be willing to do that. This is important to both Gibran and I. So we would be willing to, work with businesses and people that would like to actually see the product.
Yeah, we just got a message from Liza who said that bike shops in Philly are open for repairs. So it would be actually possible to still continue to interact with them. And Keswick Cyclists, the bike store that's in my neck of the woods, that's still open. And like I said, they do have customers coming into their parking lot. It's still an option to interact with them.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Colbert-Maduforo, Assistant Director of the Beata Institute, where SafeSense is incubating. For all of my entrepreneurs, one question I want to know is, how are you handling, emotionally and mentally, this stay at home?
Well, I guess personally for me, it's been a little bit surreal. I was going to wrap up my senior year and I was excited. And, you saw me at the incubator every day at 8 a.m., with my oatmeal and my coffee. So a lot of that hasn't changed, and I'm trying to keep those routines. But it is difficult logistically to try and work stuff out, whether it's working with classmates and peers to get classwork done or working with Gibran and the rest of the SafeSense team. It has been a little bit of a logistical issue, and I feel like stuff's going slower, but it's a problem everybody has to deal with. So I understand that, and I'm trying to recognize it and at least do the best I can. It
Right.
helps me out.
Right. Just remain mindful, right? We talk about that all the time. Just remain mindful. One question I have is that I wanted to know, are bike shops your main customer?
Not specifically. We are willing to work directly with consumers, which I think is something that kind of sets us apart. We've talked to bike shops as almost kind of a partnership. We're like, hey, once we have this finished product, if you would be willing to, stock some and actually reach out to customers, we would be willing to reach out to customers as well. A lot of this kind of goes hand in hand with getting our Kickstarter launched. So it's almost like a cross-promotional thing where we've talked to bike shops and say, hey, if you would be willing to partner with SafeSense, we'll put your logo on our website. We'll direct customer or potential customers to say, hey, this is a bike shop that's working with us, whether it's Keswick or another one in the area, to really try and solidify that partnership. We want to be a long-term thing in both Philadelphia and, nationwide. So if we could kind of build and cultivate those relationships, that would be great. But I mean, we would like to work directly with the consumer. Gibran and I have a couple other business ideas that if we could really say, look, this is what we're doing with this aspect of cycling, this is something else we're working on, and this is something else we're working on, kind of grow that company brand. That's really important for us.
Robbie, I just had a question too about when you were speaking about ride shares. Are you in touch with any of those businesses?
Yes and no. It depends on the ride share program. So in the research that we've done, like for example, the city of Philadelphia actually owns the Indigo bikes. So it would be a little bit more effective if we went through the city of Philadelphia's existing programs to try and work through their Indigo bikes and all of that kind of stuff. While certain cities have it built differently. We've talked to Zagster and other bike share companies that are at smaller college campuses and kind of see how they reach out to people and what their whole almost MO is. When it comes to Indigo, I know that the city of Philadelphia put out an RFP a couple of years ago for a new bike sharing company to actually maintain and take care of the bikes. But the problem is with all of this economic uncertainty, we don't really know what's going to go on with that. They could cancel an RFP.
I wanted to know about the difference between cyclists and recreational bike riders, or do you consider them both categories just cyclists?
We really consider it as commuters and cyclists. That's kind of the differentiation for us, because there's people that use it for recreation, exercise, even travel in a non-work setting. But a lot of those people that commute either for school or work, they ride differently. They usually have a different bicycle, and they kind of have a different way of riding than somebody who's just riding on the Schuylkill Trail. So we kind of differentiate between the two.
Okay, and you did mention that you'd be open to direct sales to consumers, right?
Yeah.
I've seen your prototype, and certainly I can see a mom like myself, because my boys ride. I'd be open to purchasing that for them as they mature in their bike riding,
Yeah. That's really what we're looking at. Safety, especially for children, is important. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. I used to commute to school via bicycle. So it's one of those things that's a market, and that's something that we would like to do. Something that really struck me was the whole Vision Zero initiative with the city of Philadelphia, but I didn't realize how many pedestrian deaths there are nationwide on bikes, whether it's young children and adults or even elderly people that are going out in that nice twilight hour and people don't see them. So it's important to keep everybody safe. But, as a mother, I know that your two kids are the top priority.
Sure. And one more question I have for you. So I know you've reached out with Zagster, and you've even considered other companies in other cities. Have you guys developed a campaign to actually reach out to those various companies in other cities?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the European market and other bike sharing alternatives just to see what's out there, especially, there are colleges like Clemson and kind of some of the FCC schools that are pushing, bike sharing on a smaller community scale, which is another option. As long as we keep people safe, that's what I'm interested in. There's tons of different options and ways to do that, but that's the goal.
Robbie, I have a question. Chuck here. So, one of the things I've observed now, I live in a more of a suburban environment. I've seen more people on bikes, families on bikes, since the COVID-19 crisis than I've ever seen previously. So, sometimes when, things like this happen, it changes people's behaviors. It changes how people do things. So, do you have a sense that, maybe bike riding will have a bit of resurgence and this will be more the norm, and therefore that actually is a great positive impact for you?
Yeah, I believe that there are a couple different reasons why people are going to start cycling more. But in general, whether it's health reasons or even ecological reasons, I'll preface this by saying I'm an environmental engineer, but I've seen a lot of stuff online talking about the reduction in pollution because nobody's working. There's less people driving, all of that kind of stuff. And I think people would say, well, why am I going to drive a mile to Wawa to grab a gallon of milk when we can ride the bikes over and, get some fresh air and really kind of not restate those American family values, but kind of bring them back to the forefront and everybody biking together and going out for family rides. And, I've seen people in my hometown with fishing poles, just ride down to the river and ride down to the lake and go fishing on your bike because there's nothing else to do. So I don't know how that would shift when people get back to work, but I hope that it would be a permanent change. That would be 2 thumbs up from me if everybody starts biking again and getting healthy.
Yeah, well, I think about another reason why people might bike is just the idea of not wanting to ride public transportation. It's to bike because of the transmission of, less risk of getting the disease or getting a disease.
And I think there's another thing that is kind of understated in all of this, that everybody that's had issues with the current COVID crisis have been people with underlying health issues. And I think we have this misconception in America that we have a healthcare system. It's not really healthcare, it's sick care. Healthcare is more proactive and diet and exercise. And I think all of these things are going to come back to the forefront. And, fingers crossed for us, but for everybody in general too.
Robbie, another question, and this relates more towards, and again, a little bit more longer term thinking, but you think about your supply chain, you think about, building a physical product, and obviously supply chain disruption's been a big part of, what's happened here recently. Have you guys put any thought into longer term, how you think about manufacturability and how you design a product that, from a sourcing perspective, you can actually mitigate risk there?
Yeah, well, that's already been disrupted. So ideally moving forward, I think that's something that is at least important to me would be made in America and trying to help American manufacturing that would be willing to help us. We have injection molds that we need. We have small computer parts, and a lot of this stuff is already being developed and improved in the United States. But if we could really work with those companies, because it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
That's absolutely going to be something in the future for I think anybody's manufacturing a physical product to start to consider.
Yeah, well, and especially, let's take a little bit more of an overview look. As I'm talking about, reworking the American mindset to be healthier and everything like that, something that goes into that would be made in America. If we say, look, this is something we want to do to help people be safer, reduce pedestrian injuries, all of this kind of stuff. We're a Philadelphia-based company, all of those sorts of things.
It's going to be important for manufacturers of any sort to really think strategically, think globally, but also mitigate the risk locally. And that's going to be an interesting part of the conversation for all types of companies in the months to come.
And I was just thinking, Robbie, as you were talking about other opportunities for SafeSense, and wondering if you've ever thought about the scooters that they have all over, like Nashville, Tennessee. That seems like a perfect product for SafeSense.
Well, actually, this is a little bit of a teaser, but when we worked with Zagster, that was something that we decided we would try and figure out. We would figure out a bracketing system and a mounting system for scooters because the general principles still apply. You still need a handlebar. We've developed handlebar grips. You still need the sensor. We have a sensor that works, and we have AI that works. So if it works on a bike, it should work on a scooter.
Yeah, there's lots of possibilities.
Well, I know scooters are very big in Washington, D.C. as well. So that's another option. And there's a lot of tourists there.
Big in lots of parts of the country, out west, LA, they're all over the place. Cities, not Philly so much right now, but
Being from Philadelphia, I've ridden bikes through the city my entire life, actually. And you mentioned having a European model. Now, with Europe, a lot of cities are built around biking. So they have bike lights built in, they have bike paths between car parking and the pedestrian walkways. Do you have any US focus on doing that with cities like Philadelphia, where Broad Street itself doesn't even have a bike path?
hmm.
Yeah, that's actually a phenomenal question. So I'll preface this by saying this was the beginning of March before the whole pandemic. But Gibran and I attended the Vision Zero conference at Temple, and it was very informative. There were people from the Office of Traffic Infrastructure and Sustainability for Philadelphia. There were sustainability workers from New York City and all throughout the Eastern Seaboard. And it seems like there is a push, at least on the East Coast, to get a lot of these cities more safer for cyclists. And I'm an environmental and civil engineer, so I know that infrastructure redevelopment in cities is going to be very big in the next 10 to 15 years, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is our economic growth out of this. You know, if there's some sort of a public works initiative like Great Depression, you know, like FDR, to really redevelop New York and Philly and DC and get that infrastructure money out there, then that would be even better. You know, we're pushing a societal change towards safer and more bikes. So if we could combine those two, that would be phenomenal. And I am a civil engineer. That's what I do. I love infrastructure. I love roads and everything. So that's right up my alley. That's really what we're trying to do.
All right, so I think we'll wrap it up here. So Robbie, thank you so much for your time. Everybody who attended today, thank you. We have recorded this.